development, and the other is the fair income distribution. This is not easy task because all the country they have different political culture, economic culture, and historical culture. In this panel, we are lucky that we have three distinguished speakers from three different countries. Dr. Muhsin from Turkey, he will explain the Turkish model. Dr. Ahmad Radhi from Malaysia, he will explain, inshallah, Malaysian development model. And Dr. Abidullah from Pakistan, and he will give the Pakistan experience about the economic development. So I called all the speaker floor, and first I give the floor to the Dr. Muhsin.
Sendeki dursun hocam.
Çalışıyor.
Tamam. Geliyor. Şuradan arkadaşlar bir dakika şey açsınlar da. Siz mi açıyorsunuz hocam? Hı. Evet, hoş geldiniz öncelikle. Ben Muhsin.
I want to welcome you all. I'm a member of the CRBT board member. I am interested in economic developments and, well, referring to Turkish model, we mean the development process in Turkey. After that, in my last slide, I will be giving you a general analysis, general review of my observations. Of course, before we need to learn about development plans, and while doing that we need to see the economic policies that are being practiced. We need to classify them, and we need to see in what period what policies were implemented. We need to review them and analyze them, know what the general characteristics of each period are, what are the external, internal factors. Of course, we need to consider them, and we need to, while talking about economics, we have many hojas, many professors, scholars who have received training, their undergraduate or graduate degrees. We have many colleagues, but we also have friends that do not have such an experience. So I'm going to try to make it understandable for all of us, make sure the balance is achieved, and make sure that anyone can follow what I'm talking about. So I will try to simplify it. Of course, in Turkey, under this scope, there are some economic policies, and they relate to the internal and external factors of their period. And we are going to have a general review, general assessment of that. While looking at Turkey's policies, we see two main categories that are present. One of them being liberal policies. The other one is interventionist policies. And while talking about these two different approaches, we have to include the economic system, and we have to look at its definition. In economic system, the state's role is significant, and how you distribute the resources and what is the ownership of resources is important. If it allows private ownership, or if the distribution of resources are controlled by the state. If the market decides on it, that's free market economy. If the state intervenes, then it will be called mixed economy, or the central liberal economies can be centrally planned economy, can be the second one. In that sense, in Turkey's economic policies are under two different headings. One of them are from 1923 to 1929 liberal ones, and after the 1980s We have interventionist policies after the war too, and after the coup until 1980. We have planned development policies, and with states intervention. Of course, they have their subcategories. For example, interventionism can have its subcategories, maybe different industrial plans, or in etatism and industrialization plans, or with after the 80s in the AK Party era, we have another development plan with its own characteristics. It's such a structure. While talking about liberal economic policies, why did we have such a choice in the foundation of a republic? We need to say, especially our friends who have received the training on economics know that that period was known with liberal economic policies all over the world, with the Edward Smith and with a lot of people advocating that the government or the state does not intervene with the economic policies. And another, after the Wilsonian liberalism, after the First World War, had an impact that the governments, the countries had a self-determination goals. So in these Wilsonian liberalism era brought such a policy, and also with the legacy of the Ottoman Empire, it integrated into the global capitalism through commerce, through indebtedness and direct investment or foreign investments too. It has such a link when you had those responsibilities, those things you had to fulfill when you had the foundation of republic, and also with our leaders' perspective towards the West, the heritage of the Ottoman Empire required such an economic policy, especially with the British delegation. These things that I mentioned in this political atmosphere, liberal economic policies were present. After the Lausanne Agreement, you couldn't use external commerce, foreign commerce, because of the capitulations and because of other capitulations. You could only use your financial policies, and there was some budgeting attempts. You only had one financial policy, which required liberal economic policies in that research of economic policies. Of course, after the declaration of republic, the new country that was going to be founded had the international, the global arena had its say in the foundation, the declaration of Republic of Turkey. So these are not by consequence. That's what I want to emphasize. Before the declaration of Republic, the general framework of economic policies were declared to the world. Of course, economic development as related to laws as well. There was the decree of incentive for industry in 1927, but it wasn't to an extent that was desired. So there wasn't much success. Of course, there are many reasons for it. In the literature, we talk about the deficiencies in the production factors. You don't have human source or human capital, or because of the war, and your physical capital is not enough because of the war, and there are some capitulations. You have lack of factors of production, wars and capitulation, and also the constraints of for the policy choices because of the Treaty of Lausanne, especially trade and monetary policies. And there was the Great Depression because in that crisis, the Great Depression, the end of because of the end of the liberal economic understanding, it required a search for alternatives, and there were such discussions. Of course, when we see this, we see there were alternative policy, a search for alternative policies, and when we think about it, we need to look at the international context, because in the country, there is an economy that is integrated with the outside world, and liberal policies in the West, in USA, after the 2090 crisis, there were also a research of alternatives. The new act was also, the new contract was the states intervening, and we see that in USA too, and in the New Deal was there, and there were serious protectionist actions, just as today with Trump. In that time there was this protectionism in international trade, and it had a destruction effect, and also the rise of nationalism in 1930s. It increased, the nationalist movement increased, and in Turkiye, while other countries were seeking a new policy, Turkiye was under the policies of economic policy of etatism, and of course private sector was not enough, and it was lacking, and the government the state had to take up some responsibility. And of course there are some discussions about them in 1930s. When we look at the assembly, National Assembly, we see a pragmatic choices made, and economics in Turkey wanted to turn to socialism instead of etatism, to be inspired by that. They had such assessment, but when you look at the assemblies meetings, and when you look at their choices, we see that it's a pragmatic, they choose a pragmatical approach, and their goal for that policy is to have independence, more independence in their economy, and autonomy of monetary policy was important. Establishment of central bank was an attempt in that sense, and there was the industrialization plans financed partially by the Soviet and the UK, and establishment of consumer bank prioritized the internal production of basic needs and consumption items. And in terms of finance, there were some factories built, and when we look at the expenses were more than estimated, so they received help. And there was a second plan, but because of war it wasn't implemented. After the war, during the war, the economy of war is very different, because the production process is going to be different. Even if the war doesn't come to your country, you need to be prepared. So it has its own special conditions, and we don't study it as much in that sense. Of course, there were many multiple parties approach, with the Democrat Party, with liberalism, with such a philosophy. And in the international arena, when we look at it, what the status is, that there's a new international order with IMF, with IBRD, with the Marshall Plan, and with USA. There are American policy of containment of Soviet communism at the emergence of Cold War. And at that time, Turkey was a member of Western institutions in IMF, in IBRD, in NATA, in the European Council of Europe, and it applied in EEC2. So it's a part of Western institutions, and also the way of its thinking was after the crisis, Keynesian policies increased. So the state of the role of the state was increased, and the developmentalism was there. The intervention of the government, the state, was chosen as a way to fill the gap in that way. And another topic here is after the effect of the Cold War, both blocs had some countries that were in common. For example, the USA and Russia. Their hinterland, they needed to support the countries that were under them. So they need to help them to keep them in their own bloc instead of having those people leave them. So they need to facilitate the development of other countries too. So Turkey, because of that, received some support in 1950s with the Democrat Party. The Republican People's Party had a urgent industrial plan, and economic development plan was also instilled with agriculture, energy and transportation. These were not implemented, but there were such plans, although they failed. When the Democrat Party was in charge, when it was ruling, it had liberal policies, but the economic structure was not enough for this. There were economic crises in 1956 and 1958. We met IMF actually, in effect, there. Although we were a member, we benefited from IMF in 1958, and after that crisis, we returned to etatism in the rest of the 50s, with the state intervening in the economy. And of course, in that sense, in that period, we know in the international economic order, Turkey's role was redefined, and there was a prominence to agriculture, to be specialty of Turkey. So with Mr. Menderes coming with tractors and machines being included in the agriculture, it's not a coincidence. Turkey was planned to develop through agriculture in the new to feed European countries. So while Europe had different approaches to development, Turkey was supported through agriculture, and the expectation from the Democrat Party was to have policies that were going to encourage international funds, and as Necmettin Erbakan Hoca says, talking about instead of producing peaches, we should have manufactured engineers. There was such a state, so Turkey was focused on agricultural development. So it's such a quote from him, and they have parallel views. And in 60s, there was a planned economic model, a planned development strategy, but there was a need for filling the gap between the level of development between countries, and especially against the communism states, the necessity of nationalist welfare was important. It emerged in that time, so there was such an international threat of communism, and Europe was preparing for that. And in 1960, with the military coup in May, there was a transition to the planned economic model. And of course, the characteristics of the development strategy in the 1960s, when you look at them, there were different plans for compulsory state, there were some substitutions to industrialization, there are many things that were not by coincidence. And in that era, there were 5-year development plans, and there were protectionist, interventionist. They were trying to control the prices of the goods. They were controlling the loans, who would receive the loans. And in that planned economic model, we call it import substitution industrialization. Instead of taking something from other countries, we try to produce it, manufacture it in our own country. And it also had intensive government intervention, and there was a lot of state intervention. And these 5-year plans, when we look at the first and second one, we see them, they were very successful. When we look at them, we see they were very successful. The goals were reached in that period. Turkiye had an Ankara agreement with EEC, and there was an additional protocol in 1973, and it allowed the manufacturing sector to access the EU markets. But this contradicts with the ICI. It contradicts itself, because the additional protocol grouped some goods in production sector, and it suggested to have less taxation for some goods, and it damaged, and there were some discussions about it damaging the production, and there were some discussions about these protectionist policies. Of course, we are trying to make sure the development would continue, but you are also trying to be integrated into Europe while having protectionist strategies, which are two conflicting strategies, so there were such contradictions. And now, when we look at these policies, we see them succeeding in their first stage in the production of consumer goods. When you have them and you produce them yourself, you are successful. But in the second phase, when the production of capital goods is the stage when you have the machine coming from another country, and you manufacture when you try to manufacture the textile machine yourself, you need a further technology, you need more human capital, and there were serious problems with that. So this import substitution industrialization plans had success and failed. So having factories that would make factories, that manufacture factories, was not a successful goal. And in that period, Turkey, because of its geopolitical position, had its own turmoils, and it was trying to get close to Europe. It was trying to reap the benefits of its geopolitical position. It was trying to get support from the Soviet countries and it also was trying to diversify the foreign aid and credits, getting closer to Europe rather than the US. And it's a key point. After the Cyprus peace operation, there were some financial burdens of the operation. The embargoes imposed by the US and the awakening for industrial policies were creating some problems in the industrialization idea, in the advanced industrialization of Turkey. And of course, in that period, there was some instability, there was polarization politically, there were coalition government, and there was increasing violence and terrorism in Turkey. So there was a lot of political instability with embargoes, with there were also some financial policies. There was accelerating inflation. There was a crisis, economic crisis in other countries. There was a lack of synchronization, and there was a serious crisis in Turkey as well. And then there was a stabilization program with the 24th of January measures, and it's tried to ensure proper functioning of market mechanism and also liberalization of trade and financial sectors, abolishing all sorts of subsidies except for export subsidies, decreasing the state's share in total economic activity. These were the frameworks of this stabilization program. Of course, the policies after the coup, it was only implemented after the coup because of the political atmosphere. There were some radical shifts in development strategy because of the union rights as well as industrialization strategy. And there were political bans, restriction of basic human rights and trade unions, abandoning the industrialization strategies. These were some challenges. In 2001, it wasn't like a program of 2001. You had to radically restructure Turkey's economic structure. So you were trying to turn to outside countries instead of being protectionist. And it also had a capital account liberalization to protect Turkish money. And when we look at the last 4 decades, from 1980 to today, we see the first phase has relative success, especially in terms of political stability. But of course, in 90s there were lots of crises happening, and there was political instability in 14 countries. In 14 years there were 14 governments because of the crisis. And in that period, Turkey had regional cooperation after the collapse of Soviets. There was launch of the customs union with EU. It was trying to position itself within NATO, and it had its responsibilities. And there was the danger of terrorism in Turkey. And when we look at the 2000s, we go from crisis to stability. Of course, finance is important. There was discipline, fiscal discipline, and restructuring of financial sector. These were the parts of the recovery programs to the strong economy, and structural reforms in social security systems, and being application for the EU full membership and the candidacy. It was a democratic consolidation, and there were to see a top non-governmental actors in play. Their role increased, and especially in 2002, it was trying to expand the scope of the social policies. So there was the discourse of a non-sum zero problem. And when we look at 2003, Turkey, 70% of the income is with its external commerce, and so it's open. Its openness is increased from 1980 to 10% to 70% in 2023. It was diversifying. The export markets, for example, ICT, had 10% in 2000s. Now it's 26% in 2023. And with the international arena after the end of the Cold War, the USA was leading and other countries were trying to taking their own role with G0 world. It was a unipolar world. It was like every country, if it works, a country is going to produce. Otherwise, countries were left to their own means. And Turkey's performance was the trading state, so it was trying to focus on trade. It was a trading state. And we see such an approach. When we look at the last decade, we see it escaping from the middle income trap. When I went to the conferences, we were talking about 1990s, about crises. In 2000, there was a stability, and then we had from stability to development, and now in 2010, after 2013, we are losing that energy, and there was such a movement to take that energy from us. There was some different global conditions, deterioration of global conditions. When we look at them, there was a secular stagnation after 2008. The structure continued after the global financial crisis. After 15 years, there were still we still don't have the averages of growth before the 2008. There was the shock of COVID-19 and geopolitical fragmentation, the China competitiveness with US and China, and everything turns to secularization with new industrial policy initiatives and strategic sectors in USA, from security and IT and microchips, and there are some serious subsidies to that, and there's high inflation in the world and stagnation and different increases and decreases in growth, and we see the nationalism actions increasing. So although we see that there are some attempts with the destruction of economic and political stability of Turkey with Gezi Park movement or justice coup attempts or 15th of July military coup attempts, we see that there's a timely rising of the defense sector, and it also needs to spill over to other strategic sectors. So we need to time it very well. And currently, we are focusing on macroeconomic stability. There's another discussion of geopolitical fragmentation, and also Turkey emerging as a connector country, meaning we have a definition of Turkey in that way. We are going to hear it in the near future with the competitiveness of USA and China. USA forces its own companies to leave China, and its investment changes its place. Its foreign investment changes its place, and it tries to find a better geographical position, and we see Mexico, Vietnam, Poland, Indonesia, Morocco as candidates to receive that investment from USA, and Turkey needs to take its own share. It needs to reap the benefits of this fact, especially if we relieve the political tension of Turkey. Maybe we can benefit from this. And when we look at the last century of Turkey, we see the international political economy is a determinative factor. This context is very important for Turkey's economic policies as well. After 1996 and 98 coups, these coups themselves had radical policy changes. They are very significant determining factors, because of this we know that the international political landscape is very important for Turkey. After the change in 1980s, the transformation, the changes that happened after the coups, they are not a coincidence. We also have these support the dependence theory, already exploiting every opportunity arose favorable from the international conditions. We see that this geostrategic position is an opportunity for us. We are trying to benefit from these opportunities after the etatism in 1930, alternative credit opportunities from Soviets in 1970, regional cooperation in 1960, with trade, state, resilience in 2010, and being a connector country for the next decade, we need to follow the international conditions and benefit from them. But because we are in the Western Bloc, we are in an integrated structure. We are under the authority of the hegemonic structure of that time, and an important part of Turkey is Turkey needs to develop under democracy. If sometimes South Africa or South Korea is compared to Turkey, when we look at 50s or today, when we look at the export per capita, we see there are differences, but these comparisons are not fair. They do not make a lot of sense, because South Korea had authoritarian rule because it had such rulers. But Turkey needs democracy, and it also needs to get its legitimacy from the people. And it is a member of many European institutions, and they require liberal democracy, and we need to meet these requirements. And short-termism of democracy versus the needs of long-termism of development is important. Of course, when we have rulers, they also need to think about the next period of their rule. We have a binary of short-termism and long-termism, and populism can be a tool in that sense. Macro stability is important, and development leaders, Erbakan and Erdogan, these leaders are important people in that sense to develop the country with the research and development to position Turkey as such a country. We had such calls, although such attempts didn't succeed fully, with our current president focusing on defense sector under the liberal perspective instead of force. This is important. Neoliberal policies, when you implement them, or when you have liberal policies, there will be injustices or disadvantaged people. There will be problems. You may have such results in Turkey. Turkey tries to eliminate these negative results by expanding the scope of social policies. There were 3 types of social support in the past. Now 61 different social support, social aids. So it has such an approach with liberal policies. Although liberal policies have their downside, we try to compensate for them. Thank you.
We thank Dr. Kar. Because this is the last panel, therefore we are a little bit flexible about time. I can give you like extra time. Our second speaker, Dr. Ahmad Radhi from Malaysia, and he's gonna give us a lecture about the Malaysian experience, about the development strategy. From his presentation title, I guess that especially he's gonna focus on the investment in human capital, I guess. Okay, floor is yours.
Thank you. How long do I have? 15 minutes? 20? 12. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. So this is the policy document for the government that was elected in 2022, the present government. So the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has actually formulated this economic policy, and it's named the Madani economic policy. So this is not the history of political economy of Malaysia, but actually the policy document for this present government. But that notwithstanding, I would like to just take a look back in a couple of slides. If I can get the slides up. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Go back. This one? This?
It's working now. This is next.
Yeah, okay. So, oh, it's gone. Oh, it's the other way. How do you get back? How do you go back to the first slide?
I think the other button you need to click.
This is the continue button.
Let me try.
Okay. So, which one?
Bir saniye. Ay, geri nasıl gidiyorsun?
Başa geldik şu anda.
Tamam, geri nasıl gidiyorsun?
This or this?
Siz bize söyleyin bize I do.
Okay. Next slide. So a bit of a step back of the last 5 decades. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. What do you want me to do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Next.
So I'll go through. If you look back at the last 50 years, this is the average, compounded average growth rates of the GDP since 1970 to when COVID hit the country. So we have a sort of a business cycle of about 10 to 12 years. 74 oil crisis, 85 commodity driven recession, and then 98 was the existential crisis in Malaysia and most of Asia, 1997, 98 Asian financial crisis, 2008, 2009 global financial crisis, and of course COVID. So we have this, and then I think for those who are observant enough, you'll see that actually while we are growing, and we have grown, I think the per capita GDP is about the same as Turkey is right now, but the population is only about 32 million. I think Turkey is about 85. But that, having said that, I think we have challenges. I think the policy document has spell out challenges. I think if you look at the CAGR, the compounded average growth rate of the economy is actually sliding down as we move from 70s, 80s, 90s, and to where it is now after 1990. So 1998, 1997 Asian financial crisis is a major cutoff point for Malaysia, and I think for most of Southeast Asian country. So the country moved from being a colonial-based commodity economy towards what it is today. I think the significant change has been the discovery of oil and gas in the 70s, but it also presents us with a resource curse, Dutch disease of sorts, a reliance on oil and gas. So we added, apart from commodity, then we added oil and gas, and then commodity-related industries and oil gas-related industries, oleochemicals, petrochemicals. And then the 70s saw the growth of manufacturing, which is export-oriented, foreign direct investment driven growth. There was rapid growth in the 90s, and then you had the Asian economic crisis. And I think right now the country is suffering from looking at new things to do. And also at the same time, we begin to see severe distributional issues in terms of inequalities within the population. So those are the challenges that we have identified. I think we accepted the fact that actually there's been deterioration in terms of governance, as measured by this one is the Corruption Perception Index. We've also taken note that actually the economy has actually domesticated. There was a time, like say up to 2000, the total trade as a percentage of GDP was over 200%. So in other words, it's a very internationalized economy, but it has grown increasingly domesticated because instead of creating new things, as the economy grew, it was actually reverting into domestic-based services, consumption, wholesale, retail, and that sort of thing. And that contributed partly to why the share labor to total income actually is quite low, at only about 32% of total income. So then wages became a problem, and although we have fantastic enrollment by girls in school and over achievement by women in universities, the female labor force participation rate is markedly low. And at the same time, on the government side, we have beginning the deterioration of the fiscal situation, and the accumulation of capital, investment over GDP have also been gone down over the years, and the competitiveness index have gone down as well, and therefore the disparities. So this is the raison d'être, or the departure point of the policy, by looking at what it was in the past and what it was when we did this thing in 2022. So what did the government decided to do? This Madani thing, of course, the Madani thing is societal, it's civilizational, but it's also trying to change the focus from what was done in the past. Of course, the Prime Minister is not an economist, so he challenges things like, this GDP, what do you want to talk about GDP? But then the shift is actually, let's look at economic outcomes as an outcome, but let's fix the underpinnings of the society first. In other words, you need to strengthen social foundations, social institutions, from family to communities, in order to not, for government, the second point, then the government doesn't have to do everything. Like say in Turkey, Ankara doesn't know everything. So we say in Putrajaya, say in Malaysia, Putrajaya doesn't know everything. Decentralized and redefining the federalism concept in Malaysia between federal, state, and local authorities. So the word decentralization, and basically empowering local entities and localities to actually decide for themselves, and recognizing that the government actually is scarce of resources given the fiscal constraints. So basically, and firms, I think we're still quite friendly to firms, but knowing that the government lacks of money, so we need to just support the growth of the third sector, which is actually the non-profit, the civil society, wakaf and things of that sort, community-driven initiatives, not-for-profit sectors. I think COVID taught everybody that actually, even when government can't do much, people can do quite a lot. So actually, that was the shift of things. So what was the decision then? The decision was actually, we have pretty good endowments. They have, people say this morning, Malaysia is a Muslim country. I think 40% of Malaysians are not Muslims. So we have a diversity of people. In Borneo, it's different than in the peninsula. And even in the peninsula, there's different kinds of people. There's Chinese, Indians, and all kinds of native people. So we look at those things as an asset. And the Madani thing is actually to say, we have the diversity, we are in the right place, the archipelago, in ASEAN, 600 million population just within ASEAN. We have a giant next door called Indonesia, and some dynamic economies up north in Vietnam and Thailand as well. So you have India and China in between. So it's a good neighborhood, diverse people, and we have foundations on resource-based stuff, on oil, petrol, chemical industries, on resource-based manufacturing, and also a very serious, sizable presence of electronics and electrical manufacturing, which is based on foreign direct investments, but also had nurtured quite a bit of auxiliary domestic-based industries within that. So now, given the US, China thing, so the China Plus One strategy is a big part of the overall development here. So the Madani thing is actually couched in the house. I took this from an official document. The original document that we presented is a house, but it doesn't look like this because it's trying to define three broad philosophy about the roof, the ceiling, and the floor. And the roof being raising, if you say raising the roof, it's actually looking for growth and economic numbers, but raising the ceiling means providing stronger social safety net. and pillars being around the middle part about gaining trust. I think, like most places, trust is actually a big issue. Most people, most countries are suffering, most governments are suffering from trust, credibility of saying anything. So I'll just go quickly. Quickly on this thing. So the ceiling is all about growth. It's about expanding the footprint of Malaysian companies. It's actually about formalizing micro and small businesses so that they can be part of the whole digitization and sustainability industries that will be part of the future thing, to participate in terms of all this green climate and digitization. There has been too much emphasis on big firms doing more of the same things, and there has to be a bit more doing different things or doing things differently, which is actually looking at the micro side of things. Very small, there's part of the domestication of the economy has to do with a growing informal sector, and part of formalizing the informal sector is trying to use fiscal tools, dishing out aid, but also registering everybody on some digital platform to get everything. So this is all about firms in order to raise the ceiling. It's about regionalization. It's about expanding the footprint of local Malaysian firms to perhaps address the domestication that's taken place. We're so used to having 160% of GDP being contributed by trade. And then I think anything below 120, 130 feels like a domestication of the economy. So that's on raising the ceiling. And then, of course, raising the floor it's about providing the safety nets, because all this transition would definitely be quite painful to firms. One of the fiscal necessities is actually to relook at both the revenue side of things as well as the expenditure side of things. I think Malaysia has spent quite a bit of money, fiscal resources, to subsidize prices. And when you do the recalibration on subsidies, you have to provide some stronger safety net. And all these things, whether it is about gender, whether it is about the community, whether it is about children, education, health, or basic infrastructure, housing, it's about committing to this sort of providing a strong safety net in order to ensure that while we undertake this transition, both in the fiscal side of things as well as in the structure of the economy, you need to provide stronger safety. For the longest time, countries in East Asia has distanced itself from providing direct aid. It's not part of the culture for government to give money. But now I think we move away from that and say, you need to provide some, not a universal basic income, but something of a transfers to household directly. So we've started doing that. But the next one is actually, I think, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I think the eating is this one. The eating is actually for government to actually have credibility by doing this stuff. So in other words, this is the government that actually will have to give away power in order to have credibility for what they want to do, because the things that they need to do can be painful for some people. So reducing the strength of the executive and empowering parliament, and therefore participative democracy, even at federal and state and regional local economy, has to be part of it. That goes towards effecting a lot of legislative reforms. You need to address corruption in a very open way. Otherwise, people will get upset that you're gonna tighten your belt. They are asked to tighten their belt, but you spend money and money that you take away from the treasury. And number 6 is big, because you need to do fiscal reforms in a very serious way, addressing both the debt side, the revenue side, as well as being more efficient in terms of the expenditure side. And the size of government has grown over the years. I think they need to address unfunded liabilities around pension schemes, around aging, which are big things that's coming to us. I think in terms of age distribution, the median has started to grow. There's now more older people or working people than there are younger people, so we need to do some of these things. So in order to raise the ceiling and raise the floor, the roof, you have to do this. And I can say actually the government is struggling with some of these things because it's not easy to do some of these things because the government is actually a coalition government. So the last slide is actually to define what does all those things trying to achieve. So I'll spend time here. I think to be in the top 30 economies in the world in terms of GDP, real GDP, I think this is quite achievable because it's already at around 36. Malaysia is about 400 some billion dollars economy. Turkey is about 1.1 trillion. Turkey is just under Indonesia, but that's to be in that category. To increase our ranking in terms of the competitiveness ranking, that we have to sort out human resources, we have to sort out schools, we have to sort out business legislation, we have to sort out things of that sort. The HDI, I think this is among the easier one to achieve. These two targets are the targets that I personally disagree. I thought the number should be higher. It was 32%. I said, how can a policy document say 45%? At least go to 50%, but actually that tells you that capital owners are quite influential versus labor union. So, but to get that by 2030 and to increase female labor participation rate and therefore increase household income to significantly, because we have almost 100% enrollment in schools for girls and higher performance by women in universities, but somehow there's a lot of maybe macho men, they don't allow their wives or their daughters to work. So we have this. So we need to sort out these things. I think this finance minister is the first finance minister that has legislated fiscal rules by parliament. So basically there is a ceiling in terms of the deficit that the government can propose in the budget. No more than 3%. There's a ceiling in terms of the borrowing that the government can take. There's also a minimum, a floor in terms of how much public investment should be. That actually then governs, that forces the government to be more disciplined in terms of the fiscal side of things. So this takes away a lot of power that used to be in the... It's also partly because the previous government, basically, we had the 1MDB scandal, where there was tens and tens of billions that were squandered by the previous Prime Minister. And this would ensure parliamentary oversight on government spending to be stronger. And then, yes. And then, finally, to really do something about corruption in a very serious way and to achieve at least better than what we are right now in the 30s and 40s, to go up in the top 25%. So that's basically the policy document of this government that was elected in November 2022, and this whole thing is called the Madani Economic Framework, and it's actually, I'll summarize by saying, because the Prime Minister himself is saying, I don't want to know about all this. He just wants to know you need to improve families, household, people at the bottom, and then let the people in the middle and the rich people sort out themselves, and they know what to do. Government just focus on maybe the bottom 50% of the population. Thank you.
We thanks Dr. Ahmed. Actually, this is not the high ranked target, like the increased female labor force participation rate 60%. It's not. It's only 50%. Yeah. I used to live in Malaysia 3 months in 2014, and my observation is female is really dominant in Malaysia. This is my observation. And one of the colleagues, Malaysian lady colleagues, I meet with her in Tehran, one of the conference. I went to this conference with my wife, and she asked me, why you bring your wife? I told him I didn't get the permission from my wife. And I asked her, did you get permission from your husband? And she said, why I should get the permission from my husband? So is that the high target?
It's currently at 55.
Thank you for presentation. And our last presentation, Dr. Abidullah Khan from Pakistan, and he's going to share us Pakistan experience for us. Thank you.
Rahim. Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity to present the Pakistan's perspective. Basically, now I will be focusing on the. It is also a part of development economics, but I am going to focus on the bottom 20% of the income group. Like Pakistan having population of around 240 million, and we having such huge population, it is always difficult to manage them. So usually, if we see from the independence till now, there is always a run between the democratic government and the military. So sometimes we have seen the military coups, and sometimes there was democratic system. So that's why we haven't observed that stability, that democratic stability. And because of that, we have faced different issues. And nowadays, we have seen that the gap between the rich and poor is getting higher. Even the middle class is depleting. So if we see from these trends, like I just took the data of past 5 years, and if we see the inflation, it has upward trend, poverty having upward trend. Then if we see unemployment, it is reduced, but still it is higher as compared to the previous years. And if we see the female mortality rate during her maternal period, so it is reduced, but as we compare it with other developing nations, it is still higher. So there are certain issues that need to be answered. Here, if we see the out of school children, there are 2.48 million children who are out of school. Like it is almost 10% population of Pakistan. So, and if we compare them by age, so if those kids who could go to primary school, they are out of school. We can see that around 11.8 million of those kids are out of school. Then for upper secondary and lower secondary, these are in millions. So, and most of them are from the bottom 40%, mostly from the extreme poor. So the government, and because of that, if we see in global ranking for out-of-school children, Pakistan is on the second. So in 2008, the government took an initiative to provide them like cash transfer to the extreme poor so that we can bring them up from the poverty, from extreme poverty to economical poverty. That scheme was quite successful and it is continued till now. But we have many foundations that are working in Pakistan to uplift the living standard of the poor. But the three are very popular. One is the Benazir Income Support Program, BISP, that is government program. Then we have a Huwat, which is a private trust, and they are offering interest-free microfinance. Then they are also offering like schooling to those kids who cannot go to school. And also they have colleges where free education is provided, and now they have initiated a university as well. They are also providing micro health facilities and also providing like clothing to the poor. Then Al Khidmat Foundation, their focus is more broad And if you see, they are offering interest-free microfinance. They are also offering technical education. So these students, these young generation, they learn some technical skills, and then they start earning their livelihood. They are also providing like water, sanitation, and hygiene to those in those poverty-affected areas. Disaster management, whenever there's a disaster, they are the first to go there and provide aid. Then they are also providing community services. They are also operating in different countries, like in Gaza. They are offering these humanitarian aids, and they also have the orphanage. So they are actually working to uplift the standard of these bottom 40%. But the focus that we will put on here will be on the BISP scheme, which is the government-based scheme. And every year, the government allocates a certain budget for this program. So the first one is the unconditional cash transfer program. So in development economics, we see that this program is always criticized. And as Mahathir Mohamad said, that we should not give them fish, rather than we should give them rod to catch fish. But if we talk about these extreme poor, they actually, we cannot lift them from the poverty because they do not have any skills. And and they are more in majority, they are like under the head of poverty, they are in majority. So this cash transfer program actually focuses on 2 SDGs, and SDG 1 is no poverty, and the second one is gender equality. So mostly in Pakistan, women are not working, so they are always at home. That's why in this program, they are trying to put more emphasis on women rather than men, because men are already earning, most of them are earning. And like this program was the first within this umbrella of BISP. It was initiated in 2008. And the focus was on the chronic and those extreme poor to secure them against the macroeconomic shocks. So currently this cash assistance is provided to around 9 million families, and they are provided quarterly payments. So there is a specific database that from past 3-4 years the government is maintaining, and they are including those people in that database so that they have the record of them. So whenever like they want to extend some kind of facility to them, they match their national identity card number with that database. And on the basis of that, if someone is not there, they register themselves, and then their case is re-evaluated. And if it is according to the criteria, they are included within that database. So most of these 9 million families are within that database. Now the second program is educational support. As we have seen that these kids are out of school. So the government came with an idea that why not we encourage them by providing stipend to the students. And like the case in Pakistan is that if you see these poor, they usually do not send their girls to the school. If they have a choice that whether to send their boy or girl to the school, they will prefer boy. So again here, the government focused that we should encourage girls as well. So they put more weight towards that end. Now with this program, they are trying to match these SDGs like no poverty. As like in literature, we can see that the education and the employment are correlated. So that's why with education, we can also aim at reducing this poverty. Inclusive education, provision of education, and then gender equality. So these 3 are targeted within this program. So from these statistics, if we see in Pakistan, those people who are educated, they are mostly either they have primary education, lower secondary education, or higher secondary education, and that's why the government targeted those students who are going to be enrolled or already enrolled from kindergarten to higher secondary education. And this program was initiated in 2012. Now there's a conditional cash transfer program. So the condition is that if the kid is going to the school, they will get stipend. And the program encouraged the enrollment and deplete. One of the condition was that they have to maintain a specific attendance percentage. If they are not able to maintain it, so they will be no more given that stipend. So initially it was introduced as a pilot study within 5 districts, and now recent data shows that in 2021 this program is also extended to secondary and higher secondary education, and in 2020 it was offered countrywide. So if we see here, since the introduction of this program till June 2023, we can see that the number of in this red we have female students, and in the black we have male students. So we have been given these statistics, and like in millions, the students were enrolled in those programs. They were encouraged to be enrolled. And in a specific year, like according to the data of 2023, there are like 3.6 million new enrollments. And most of them are from the extreme poor segment of the society. And if we see the attendance, so overall the average is 86% attendance is maintained. And from this program till now, 390,000 students are graduated. And now for the specific year, the budget was around 14.58 US dollars. Out of which 52% were disbursed to girls and 48% was disbursed to boys. Now, this was the recent program, and in previous political regime, this program was introduced, and it has been observed that within these low-income groups, women are always malnutrition. They are deficient in iron and vitamin D. So during pregnancy, there is always probability that they will lose their life. Or if they produce babies, those will be like a stunted baby who are shorter than what they should look in their age bracket. So for that purpose, the government introduced this scheme. The focus was to provide them enough nutrition, so zero hunger was the SDG that was targeted, and the promoting good health through provision of health facilities. So there is actually 1,000 days window for this program. Those who are enrolled within this program, the women, they have a 1,000 days window. So they are targeting the antenatal period when the woman is pregnant in that period, and then they are also targeting that postnatal period when the woman produces baby. And they are also working on child stunting. So in the initial stage, they are provided those supplements in advance. So for 90 days, they are provided the supplement. And there are 2 visits to the facilitation centers. In the first visit, they are provided supplements. In the second visit, within the same 90 days, in the second visit, they are provided some cash amount as well to encourage them. And in the postnatal stage, they are again provided supplements. And for child stunting, these children are actually provided supplements which are like sachets and they can swallow it. So since the inception of this program, there are total registered beneficiaries, which are 179,000, and those women are 76,000, around 76,000, and breastfeeding women, they are also registered. And the registered children with this same program to be secured from that stunting are 45,000 are boys and 57,000 are girls. And those who are graduated from this program, who have completed this program till June 2022, those are 18,123. So basically the focus was on the three elements, like we have to pull up the extreme poor. If they become economic poor, so then they can go towards the Huwat or Al-Khidmat, and they can take loans, interest-free loan, and start their business. The second was to provide them education, to educate them. And the third was to provide them health facilities. So the focus was not only provision of cash transfer, because they also need the other facilities as well. So in this whole program, these 5 SDGs were targeted. And basically, if we see these 5 SDGs, most of the time when we see these 5 SDGs, we think about the poor. And that's how they target it through these SDGs. They target this program. As well as from the Maqasid al-Sharia perspective, they also targeted those maqasid, the specific objective, like the one's own preservation of some nafs or someone's own self, and their offsprings and their wealth. So that was the overall program statistics, but they are also now planning to start different other programs, like provision of some loan to the economically poor. So mostly they are in the agriculture sector, so to provide them like tractor or those machineries so that they can start their business. And I forgot to tell that in recent year, the name is changed to BISP. Before it was called Ehsaas program, and like we worldwide people know about this program as Ehsaas program, because most of the WHO reports that are written and appreciated this program. At that time, the name was Ehsaas program. Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
I thank all speaker, and now I called all speaker on the seat, so we can get the question. Please take the seat. Before take the question, I have to mention about if you look at we talk about the 3 countries. For example, in Turkey, per capita income is around $11,000 or $12,000. Am I right? Yeah. In Malaysia, it's similar, $11,000 or $12,000. In Pakistan, $4,000 or maybe less than $4,000 per capita income. If you don't have the strong economy, then you don't have this the technology, then you don't have the strong army. This is important. First, we have to develop our economy. Then we can develop the technology and army. If you look at in Israel, per capita income is $55,000. I mean, you can make the comparison. And the Turkey and Pakistan, we know the militarily most powerful Islamic country, but if you look at the economic power, if compared to Israel, really low. Only Qatar has $84,000 per capita income, higher than Israel. Even if like the Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, their per capita income is lower than Israel. So this is why this development is important in terms of the economy. But it's not easy. I mean, here we listen the 3 countries' experience. All of them, they have the different strategy. They try to succeed, but we need to get too much way. Okay, now I can open the question for the floor. Okay. If you introduce yourself, okay.
Türker Saltabaş, Cihannuma.
This is Türker Saltabaş from the board of the Cihannuma Foundation. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for all the lovely information, all the important information that you shared. But economically, we are, of course, lagging behind in terms of world rankings. But when it comes to humanity and humanitarianism, we are ahead of the Western society. But I noticed one thing in terms of gender equality. Unfortunately, this gender equality is also an issue with us. I actually listened to our speakers from Malaysia and Pakistan focusing on gender equality. But the most important thing that keeps us going as the world of Muslims is family. And family starts with the woman, with the mother, and mother has to stay at home. That's where she belongs to. If they are forced to work, if they are forced to go out to work, then the family structure will be collapsing and you will no longer be in a good place. So in terms of gender equality, why are we still insisting? In Turkey, of course, some things we do because it's mandatory, but why do we insist? I can ask to both, I can ask this question to both my panelists, because they also alluded to gender equality. Why do we insist on it still? That's the question.
You mentioned that like equality between the female and male, and he said why we talk about the equality between the female and male. Female should be at home like a mother. Why we focus more on this? I don't know. You mentioned about this, or we misunderstand. So can you answer it?
It's not.
Or you just say the equality in education, or
No, equality in education and equality in terms of earning. Like we are not saying that they are equal to men, or we do not say that, like vice versa. The physical appearance and those things are different for everyone. But like promotion of education is very important. And secondly, I was talking about that extreme poor. So the women do not have any earnings. And usually those men who are earning, they are also not providing it at home. So that's why they are targeting those women so that they can also get income and support their family. Mostly women are supporting their family in that income bracket. So that was not from the other perspective. Maybe it is standard.
Yeah, it's not equality as men, women equals men. Equality in terms of access to education. In Malaysia, access to education. But we have a problem of we need to grow the household income. If the household income is a two-income family, it's a better household income. So the help is you need to provide childcare, for example, in order to allow women who are educated. From a government perspective, we spend a lot of money to make sure that all the girls go to school. Public money, taxpayers' money. And then, actually, what is the return on that spending? The return on that spending, actually, they should be involved in the production and the economy. So, we're not saying men equals woman, woman equals man. That's from a value, societal point of view, that's fine. But from a purely economic point of view, we need to actually increase household income. And one way to increase household income is to get returns on what is being spent on education, which is actually on girls and women. In Malaysia, 2/3 of the students at the universities are women. You said you met.
yeah.
So we need to make sure that they can work and participate in the transformation of the economy. But if they choose not to work, fine.
I think it's clear. So it's not the equality in gender, it's equality in wage or education opportunity. Sure. Okay, who's the next question?
Merhabalar, Zekeriya Menak, öğretim görevlisiyim.
Hello, this is Zekeriya Menak, a lecturer. So I'd like to thank you for this incredible, informative presentations. So I have a question to Muhsin Bey, Mr. Muhsin Kar. So after the 1940s, in that political atmosphere, US and Soviet Union focused on a lot of political subsidies to keep up their political power, to shift the global balance to their favor. That's how they shaped their policies at the time. So in today's global conditions, of course, we don't have the same exact policies or subsidies, but do we have other similar economical structures or political structures that facilitate that kind of subsidies or help to other countries? What kind of a system do we have now to replace that? So international situation or international condition, of course, depends a lot on the blocks that you're in. I tried to mention that. Turkey has always been facing towards the West since its establishment, so that's why I always focused on that. So at the same time, Turkey tries to benefit from the international means available. Of course, depending on the internal political leaders and their will to make use of those advantages. So in the 2000s, after 90s, after the Soviet Union was gone, everyone accepted the leadership of the US, and then US basically left some playing field to other countries. That's the G0 argument is based on. And that was the time period where everyone basically got return of their hard work and effort. So, but after 2010s, since we have, after the global crisis and stagnation, we see more and more disintegration. We see trade mostly focusing on between in the blocks, and competition got more fierce recently. And for example, in the US now, the economy and politics is closely related to international politics, and basically they are just separating those friendly countries and non-friendly countries. So if you are one of those non-friendly countries, then you will be in a disadvantageous position when it comes to their customs efforts. So that affects you. So of course, countries like Turkey keep up with their relations in that sense, but basically things are getting more competitive and the environment and climate getting rougher and rougher is what we see now. And that's what I was trying to get to. I tried to mention connector countries. For example, these countries attract the Chinese direct investment, because those countries can, such as Mexico, Chinese foreign direct investments goes to Mexico, for example, and then they sell it elsewhere after that, the products that they produce. So Chinese companies go and invest in Mexican companies so that they can sell their products to the US market. So that's what I mean when I talk about connector countries. But Bangladesh, for example, Bangladesh has a different situation. Bangladesh receives foreign investment, including from China, but its exports are not just directed towards the US, so they are more diversified in terms of their exports. Turkey, especially in these periods, in terms of getting foreign direct investments, because Western companies are basically getting closer and closer to US, and China becomes more active. So that's how you get, as a country like Turkey, you get some share of that Chinese foreign direct investment. Turkey is, of course, a part of a lot of international institutions like the World Bank and others. And we are also following the developments in Asia as well. What the banks are doing, what is also following the political developments in Asia closely as well. But currently, in terms of production and where we sell, we see mostly Europe. But Turkey diversified its trade. So since the 2000s, for example, about 10% was the OIC members, 55% of goods sold were to European countries, but now European countries are about at 45% in terms of Turkey's exports. But for example, OIC has now 26% share in terms of Turkish exports. Turkic states are also included. So yeah, diversification of exports for Turkey is also important. Thank you very much. This is Mahmut Demirelli from Cihannuma board of Istanbul. So I have a question to Mr. Muhsin Kar. In terms of the development models that you mentioned, you gave us a great summary. You mentioned previous Prime Minister Erbakan and also the current President Erdogan, and you also touched upon some of the things they did. So currently on TVs, we see a lot of so-called experts who comment on everything, who know everything from politics to sports. We have to listen to those people every day on TV, those commentators. So what I'm getting at is people say a lot of things when it comes to like interest rates. We see strong changes in interest rates, foreign exchange rates. A lot of developments happen. So how should we understand these developments? How should we approach as regular citizens? Can you guide us in that sense? So I'm not intentionally, I'm not going into detail when it comes to current developments. So I'm not. I'm also not representing the bank at the moment. So I wouldn't like to say be on the record commenting on that unofficially. So maybe we can talk with you after the panel.
Mr. Nungsari, Ahmad and Abdullah, Mr. Abdullah. Yes, both of three countries has different stories. We live in the same time, but we make our civilization not in the same time. Yes, we see, and I remember 20 years old presentation in Turkey from, for example, from Pakistan like this. My question is that to Mr. Nungsari Ahmed. Yes, we have good stories, but I want to ask that, is there any brain drain from Malaysia to, for example, Western countries, or getting some immigration from the other countries to Malaysia? And the question is for you too. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, please. Sorry. Maybe, I'll answer first. You know, we have a Singapore, which is have 6 million people. So one fifth of Malaysian population, but the economy is slightly bigger than Malaysia's economy. So the Singapore dollar is three ringgit to the dollar. So if you ask about brain drain going south, because every day, I think about 300,000 Malaysians go to work and come back across the border to Singapore. So that's the biggest brain drain in Singapore. There's also brain drain to Australia, mainly to Singapore, to Australia, and a little bit in the US. But in terms of people coming in, it's also a lot because the neighbor next door is actually Indonesia. It's about 300 million people. There's easily 2-3 million Indonesians who are in Malaysia. There's also people from Bangladesh, and because Bangladesh has this Rohingyas, the Muslims, so they're not immigrants. They are refugees, right? So maybe 500,000 of Muslim refugees from Myanmar, and then Bangladesh, and also from Indonesia.
Well, in case of Pakistan, in the past 2 years, there is a huge brain drain. Like skilled labor in millions have left the country. And one of the reasons is that the economic situation there, the inflation is quite high, and Pakistan is dependent on IMF loans. So they are taking one loan to pay off the another. And then the IMF stringent rules are those that you have to tax. And there are no much avenues left where you can tax the people. So they are now going towards the income class because they are the first one that can come under the net. So again and again their income is getting deducted, but there is no increase. And if you get increase, you get it on your basic income, but you taxed on your gross income. So that's why most of the people, they are leaving. Law and order situation is also not good. So people are like hopeless. So in past 2 years, too many people left the country. Yes, thank you.
Panele son vermeden önce moderatör.
Before I end the panel, I'm not, of course, I'm the moderator, but maybe I can answer your question, sir. So in terms of your question about interest rates, in one of today's speeches as well, one of scholars from Pakistan mentioned it, how going on from the modern money theory in Islam. So there are 3 main goals, he said: 0 unemployment, 0 inflation, and 0 interest rates, he said. So in Islamic economy, our aim is not to increase or decrease interest rates, rather to remove interest rates completely. Even if it's just 0.